Hello and welcome to another episode of Indian Standard Time. My guest today is a senior Pakistani journalist, Mehmal Sarfaraz. Welcome to the show, Mehmal.
Thank you.
Apart from being a former op-ed editor of the Daily Times, which is an important daily English language daily newspaper, you have written for the Friday Times. You have worked earlier with the Human Rights Commission for Pakistan, and now you are Deputy Secretary General of SAFMA, South Asia Free Media Association, which we are quite familiar with in India because SAFMA in the past has been quite successful in bringing Indian and Pakistani journalists together to discuss issues of common concern. What we wanted to talk about today with you, because it's rare for Indians to hear the views of Pakistani civil society. We're used to Pakistani officials coming, Pakistani diplomats coming, but we don't often get a flavor of liberal Pakistan, the civil society, its concerns, its views, and that's essentially what I wanted to talk to. But starting off with the media itself, because the media is an important vehicle for articulating the concerns of civil society. As somebody who's been visiting Pakistan often and has interacted with Pakistani journalists, I've been struck by how courageous my Pakistani counterparts and colleagues have all been. Often they are very bold in the way they confront the establishment, the way they confront power, confront jihadi groups. But obviously this confrontation comes with enormous risks. And we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years killing of journalists, assassination attempts. How would you rate the overall climate for media freedom in Pakistan today? Is it very risky being a journalist?
Well, it's a mix of both things. I mean, it is very risky being a journalist, especially if you're anti-establishment, if you are anti-religious extremism, if you challenge the status quo. But on the other hand, we see that there are a lot of Pakistani journalists who are pro-status quo, who are also very cautious when it comes to religion and religious issues, talking about blasphemy laws or minority issues or other such things. But then again, Pakistan is also one of the most dangerous countries for journalists. So we have to face a lot of pressures from a lot of different groups. Like if some of us take on the military establishment, then there is pressure from the agencies, from the military itself. If you take on, I think now actually the more risky thing is to take on the religious extremist groups and
the armed groups.
The armed group, even or even religious issues like blasphemy. I mean, that has become such a sensitive topic that a lot of journalists who are now wary of discussing blasphemy issues, or even when they're talking about minorities, they will not talk about the Ahmadi issues that much or other such sensitive issues, because then there's a lot of backlash from the general public as well as local mullahs who are, yes, they have a lot of support, they are armed, but they do not belong to any armed militant group as like the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi or Sipah Sahaba. I mean, they are not these groups, they are Barelvi groups or Barelvi people, and even then you can be lynched or you can get a fatwa against you. Right. So that kind of thing happens. So it's from state and non-state actors both.
So let's talk about the state actors to begin with. As an editor, or I mean, not specifically about yourself, but the average editor or the average reporter, would they hear directly from the, officers of the Pakistani military or the ISI, ki bhai aisa mat likho, aisa mat dikhao? How does it work? I mean, in what way is this pressure felt?
Well, sometimes they get direct threats from military officials, like we saw in the case of Salim Shehzad, right, who was called in by the ISI guys.
And he was writing about disappearances?
Yeah, no, he was also writing, actually he was writing about infiltration of Al-Qaeda within the...
So connections between extremists and perhaps the military establishment.
He was writing about a lot of stuff that irritated them. And then there are other journalists like Hamid Mir, for example, he was doing shows on Balochistan and other stuff that didn't really go down well with the military. Then there are people like Najam Sethi and Imtiaz Alam who got threats from both state and non-state actors. Najam moves around in armored vehicle and with armed guards, and same is the case with Imtiaz, that he has to move around with police cars. And those who cannot afford armored cars, or who don't even have connections to get police cars, then they are the easy game.
Right. So Salim Shehzad's case has never been resolved, right? I mean, his incident, his abduction and death happened shortly after the attack, I think, on the Mehran, on the naval base in Karachi, and he
in 2011
was supposed to have sensitive information. What kind of investigation was done in that case?
Well, there was a commission, a judicial commission was formed, but what happened was basically that the Human Rights Watch, he had written to them, he had told them that I have been getting these threats, so he had given them minutes of the meeting. So the Human Rights Watch, when he was abducted, they said that, the usual, the topmost suspect is the ISI. But we want the agencies to cooperate with us and tell us what exactly happened. And when his body was found, then a judicial commission was formed. And a lot of people gave evidence. A lot of journalists talked about threats to them directly by the military, or, indirectly they got threats from the military. But nothing happened with the judicial commission. The report is, it's atrocious, the way that they've not blamed anybody. It's like Salim killed himself. Right. So that's something, nobody got closure from it.
Now Salim was a journalist who perhaps was not all that well known in India. Those of us who followed Pakistan closely or read the online media were aware of him and his work. But Hamid Mir is a well-known face in here. He, apart from being a fixture in many India-Pakistan meetings, his interviews and various other things that he's covered have well received and well regarded here. He also then was subjected to an assassination attempt. Any sense of how that came about and what the status of the investigation in that case is?
Well, he'd been getting threats from the military, so he'd written to his owners, Jio owners, Jio Jung owners, Mir Shakilur Rahman, and he had also told some of his close friends and family that he'd been getting threats from the military. So he had named some people in that email. So once this attack took place, a lot of people say that it was because of his Balochistan stance and because he had interviewed Mama Kadir Baloch, who had led this long march against the military establishment and against the disappearances, basically. So they did not want him to interview him, and that's maybe one of the reasons. And there were other reasons, there was some background as well. But the sad part is, Siddharth, that when he was shot and he survived, well, one can disagree with Jio's editorial policy in the sense after the post-attack, the way that they handled the whole thing.
They blamed the establishment directly.
Yes, they blamed the ISI chief directly.
Yes.
They flashed his photographs. So one can disagree with that. But then again, you don't know, the kind of backlash that Jio received was something unprecedented. We have not seen something like that in Pakistani media, and it was disgusting and shameful for a journalist.
So what was the state response? Their signals were, there was an order that their signals were not to be carried by any cable operator.
Yes, they were actually taken off unofficially from Pakistan. Like every city in Pakistan, nobody would be able to get Jio.
And this was an unofficial ban, or was it PEMRA, the electronic media?
This was an unofficial ban, and the unofficial ban has actually hurt them the most. Their revenues went down. There was a total blackout of Jio News, and then other media groups reacted in a very disgusting way. It was also because of the pressure from the ISI, from the agencies, and it was also because of economic interest. So basically what they did was they thought that, okay, this is our chance to capture the market that Jio had. And then they launched this attack on Jio, on Hamid Mir's person, or anybody associated with Jung Jio group. And that is something that led to Pakistani media self-implosion. And the State media, the States were actually dictating the terms to the journalists. So what was shameful was that the other journalists did not take a stand on Hamid. Not many of them did that. And those who did, like Mr. Imtiaz Alam was working with Express Group at that time, he took a stand on it, and he had to resign because he was not allowed to do his show live on Hamid Mir because he was told by the States, and he said, look, I'm not going to take dictation, and then he resigned. But that's the kind of thing that that happened, and it has actually it has done is that it has impinged on our freedom. We have given up our rights. The media itself has given up its independence by playing party with the establishment.
So it will be a classic case of how, although competition can be good for media, too much of competition or competition which is run in a negative way can have a horrible effect.
This was totally unethical, so that was the thing.
Yeah, so essentially other channels took advantage of Jio's problems in order to boost their own ratings.
Yes, and also because they were afraid that if we don't toe the establishment's line, something similar like this could happen to us as well. And our channels may be taken off air unofficially as well, and we'd be...
So has Jio's now back on air, but has it suffered long-term damage because of this?
It has. It's still trying to regain its rating. It used to be #1, and the other channels would be like, the rating difference would be like this.
Right.
So now it's like 1, 2, and it's very close to the other channels as well. But it is regaining this because the thing is that Jio is a very, very good channel, even though I don't like some of the positions that it takes, even though don't like the agenda setting that it has done over the last 5 years. I mean, especially during the PPP government, it was completely against the PPP. It did not let the PPP government function.
And that colored the way it presented news?
Yes, yes. The 9 p.m. bulletin.
So we have many examples of that in India also.
No, they set the trend for it. You know, I mean, and then they had actually they decided to side with Chief Justice Iftikhar Chaudhry, and because of that, they had this whole thing with the PPP going on. But that was completely unethical, and I was not really. And not just me, and there were many others who did not like it. But even then, you know, we'd always switch to Jio for news. Right. We'd always switch to Jio because it has so many different kind of anchors, from Najam Sethi to Iftikhar, to Suhail Vadai, Hamid Mir, Sana Bachcha, others who were there at that time.
All credible names, actually.
Yes. So, you know, I mean, you would get different views.
Right. Now, attacks by the government or by jihadi groups are not the only source of threat. Questions can be raised about the ethical standards of some of the anchors, some of the channels. There was a flurry of moral policing kind of anchoring that we saw a couple of years ago. Maya Khan, for example, one of the
morning show,
who would go and surprise kinnars or you know, transsexuals or homosexuals on the street and sort of subject them to forced photography. Has that ended, or is that still there, this kind of vigilantism or moral policing among the television channels?
It's still there, Siddharth. I mean, even with Jio, that's something that, you know, you can, despite everything, there are some ethical things that Jio still does.
So Jio also indulges in this?
Yes, they have this televangelist, Amir Liaquat, who had once given who did this program against the Ahmadis, and you know, as a result, 3 Ahmadis were killed in the following week. And then even now he's done some of such stuff, but then there are other channels like ARY. Mubashshir Luqman is one such name, who's actually gained a lot of rating due to this Jio blackout. So this guy went on against Jio because there was a program, there was a morning show in which there was this Qawwali being played, and then there was an entire blasphemy issue made out of it. The host of that show, Shaista Waidi, had to leave the country immediately because ARY kept playing and kept saying that she's a blasphemer, and then Veena Malik and her husband, you know, others. So they had to flee the country as well. So this
and they haven't been able to come back since?
No.
Right. And
this is something that goes on, and even with, as I said, that, you know, religious issues are more sensitive when it comes to these things. Like when Salman Taseer was talking, Governor of Punjab Salman Taseer was talking about Asiya Bibi and how she had been falsely blamed for blasphemy and when she hadn't committed it. So when he went to visit her, and you know, he said this Ziaul Haq's blasphemy law, he called it a Kala Kanun, black law. That's what we usually say about it as well. So he said that Ziaul Haq's blasphemy law is a black law, and she needs to be pardoned, or you know, the High Court needs to set her free. But what happened was that a lot of TV anchors took a position against him. Especially there was Meher Bukhari on Sama TV, who did who did a one-on-one with him, and then said that, you know, there's a fatwa against you and you are wajibul qatl. Right. So stuff like that. And then it resulted in his assassination. And this post-assassination, the same woman that I just talked about. Right. She did a show on the day that it was his funeral, and she started with that if Ghazi al-Din Shaheed can be a hero, then why not Mumtaz Qadri? That was the opening statement. So these things still go on.
He was the gentleman who shot the lawyer who defended famous...
No, Ghazi al-Din was somebody who had shot the publisher of a book, of book in the 1930s. Yeah, in United India.
That's right, exactly. Mehmal, we'll take a short break on this, and when we come back, we will discuss civil society responses to the attacks on minorities in Pakistan and what civil society can do about India-Pakistan relations. Do keep watching. Welcome back. You're watching IST, and my guest today is Mehmal Sarfaraz, senior Pakistani journalist. Mehmal, the terrorist attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar saw an outpouring of grief in Pakistan. It touched millions of hearts in India too. And we saw, from our vantage point, a fresh impetus to civil society in Pakistan, its willingness to confront jihadi groups. This pressure was also then seen having an effect on the Pakistani establishment, the Pakistani government, which declared that it would now treat all of these groups in the same way. It would not differentiate between a good Taliban and bad Taliban. But I wanted to look at civil society, and there's been some effort to have rallies or meetings on the 16th of every month to show that Pakistanis are united against terrorism of all kinds. How strong is this movement? Is it really capable of taking on the jihadi groups when the state itself appears unwilling or incapable of doing so?
Well, our civil society is quite brave and courageous, and in the past they have made some marks. Like they were able to, because of their pressure, the Hudud ordinance was changed. The rapes, before the law was amended, it was that the rape survivor would actually get booked for adultery.
Right.
Because of the Hudud ordinance, and it was due to civil society's pressure that it was amended. Then, sexual harassment at workplace for females, for women, was it came about. The law came about because of civil society pressure. Yeah. So even now.
So there have been successes in the past.
Yes, there have been successes, but then again, our civil society is not taken seriously by some in our political, in the power corridors. And there was a lot of post APS, when they were talking about setting up military courts, there was a lot of resistance from the civil society. Civil society opposed that. Civil society opposed capital punishment, but we saw that our politicians and our military went right ahead and made those laws. But it serves as a pressure group. It serves as the voice of the conscience of the people of Pakistan. That is something, and they also get threats. I mean, if the media is living dangerously, the civil society is doing this. They face the exact same threats. Our lawyers who take up blasphemy cases, people who challenge the military establishment, who challenge the jihadi groups, they do then end up getting.
So there are still lawyers who are willing to come and accept these difficult briefs?
Yes, last year Rashid Rahman was killed. He was a lawyer defending a blasphemy accused, and he was killed in broad daylight. And there are, so that's a lot of, and then there are judges. I mean, the judge who gave Salman Taseer's murderer a death sentence, who ended it to Mumtaz Qadri, he had to flee the country.
Right, right. And the military courts, what is the objection of people in civil society? After all, if these are, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if these are bad guys who've done terrible things, and they were sentenced to death, and there was a stay on that, if this is going to carry on, and if military courts may lead to the speedy trial of some of these accused, what's the objection?
Well, the objection is that what we need to do is that we need to reform our judicial system. And we don't need speedy trials, because already there are a lot of lacunas in our law, and then Pakistanis do not, I mean, military courts will not follow the procedure. Right. And we've seen it in the case of Shafqat Hussain just now.
Exactly.
I mean,
this is the juvenile who was about to be hanged and has got a last-minute reprieve.
And then all the hangings, all the executions that have taken place are actually, they are not all of them are terrorism related.
Right.
They are for terrorist attacks on the military and others, but they haven't executed those people, not sectarian people. I mean, they haven't executed Malik Ishaq. There's no case against Malik Ishaq, people like Malik Ishaq. They haven't even executed Mumtaz Qadri.
Right. I remember a few years ago, perhaps in 2007 or 2008, talking to a senior Indian official who knew Pakistan very well. He was slightly hawkish, as many of these officials are, but he was also convinced that there would be resistance within Pakistan society as a whole and within Punjab if the jihadi groups would cross the red line of targeting shrines like Data Darbar Sahib. And then that happened in 2010. And there was, of course, outrage and anger, but that didn't become a transformative moment. What's happening at the base of Pakistani society? Shrines that are revered by the vast majority of Pakistani Muslims and non-Muslims, they can be targeted so easily, and this doesn't lead to widespread demands for these groups to be acted against. Is it that people are scared, or is it that the jihadi groups are able to play on the religious sentiments of people? How does that dynamic work?
Well, one thing is that a lot of these militant organizations have direct or indirect support of the military. Now so
it's the patronage that in a way gives them credibility.
Some of them have turned against the military during this war on terror. Then there are other groups who have the patronage of the political parties. Even the Sharifs are quite close to the LEJ. They have electoral alliances with Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, which is a sectarian organization and kills Shias. Yes. So, and apart from that, there is a rising intolerance in Pakistan, and that has happened due to a number of reasons. One of them was the curriculum change that happened during Ziaul Haq's time, and then because of Saudiization of Pakistan, in the sense that there is a lot of Saudi influences increased over the past 2 decades. Right. And that is because we are, in Pakistan and actually in the subcontinent, there are more Barelvis who are closer to the Sufis than Deobandis or Salafis who are close to Wahhabism. So because of Saudi money, because there are a lot of madrasas that are funded by Saudis, Wahhabism has grown in Pakistan.
So the character of
our society has completely
right,
changed over the past few years.
Right.
And there's this anti-Shia sentiment is on the rise. Anti-Ahmadi sentiment was always, it was always there, but now it has risen to an extent that there's a lot of your ordinary people justify attacks on Ahmadis or justify attacks on Shias, and they're not repulsed by these attacks.
And attacks on other minorities, Hindus, Christian churches have recently been subjected to suicide
attacks
bombing.
on Christians are different. Christians are a very peaceful minority, and because they're non-Muslims. Right. So people find it, they're actually more sympathetic to the Christians or the Hindus, even the Hindus. They're more sympathetic to them. But with Shias and Ahmadis, because they're considered, like Ahmadis have been ostracized by the state of Pakistan and have been declared non-Muslims, even though they call themselves Muslim. And the Shias is that there's 25% Shia Muslims in Pakistan. But a lot of people do not consider them Muslims, or they think that, they have difference of opinion because it's a sectarian thing. And the Saudis do not consider Shias Muslims, but they have not been able to officially declare them non-Muslims because of Iran. Right. So that's the thing. But a common person would say that, no, the Shia beliefs are completely different from ours.
It's fashionable to blame the madrasas in Pakistan for this radicalization. But I was shocked on a recent visit to Pakistan somehow I missed the news when it happened, but this how some of the middle class parents of Lahore Grammar School, which is a famous and well-known school, agitated elitist school, and they agitated against the school authorities for having introduced a comparative religion program, and finally they got the state government to ban that.
Actually, it wasn't more so the parents, it was Mubashir Luqman.
Right, so the same TV anchor that you mentioned, that's right.
Yes.
But apparently it was some parents who went and told him.
No, he wanted I think his own daughter to study in LGS, or maybe he wanted somebody else. So he did the sifarish and they did not listen to him because it's not on merit. And so that's why he said, okay, fine, I'll deal with you guys. Right.
But the upshot was that a perfectly harmless course which every child needs to really learn, comparative religions, got plucked from the curriculum.
No, it was taken out.
When we talk of civil society and the courageous fight that all of you are waging against extremism, intolerance, the military establishment, the question arises about India-Pakistan relations and how, the argument often made in India is that civil society is too small and ineffectual. When India ought not to tailor its policies towards Pakistan by keeping in mind the likes and dislikes of Pakistani civil society because you're too irrelevant to matter. What do you make of that argument?
Well, we may be too irrelevant, but Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is not irrelevant. Right. And the way that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was treated by your government when he visited for Modi's oath-taking ceremony was despicable.
In what way?
In the way that, when he came here, he was given this...
the meeting itself went very well. And they were tweeting with each other later.
No, but Mian Nawaz Sharif held his press conference. There was no reciprocal press conference. There was no joint press conference. Then Sujata Singh laid it to the Pakistani authorities and said that, we'll come down hard on terrorism, which is fine. But, Mian Nawaz Sharif is he's taking a huge risk by taking on the establishment. There was Musharraf tribals going on one side, and obviously that had made his relations with the establishment even more worse. They were worse than ever before. And then he did this with the Indian government as well. So, but there was he did not get a response from the Indian government.
As a liberal...
that was taken, as something humiliating for him, and that was actually the Hawks were very happy about it, and they said that we told you so.
So as a liberal critic of the military establishment, as a liberal critic of the jihadi groups, and as somebody who really wants to see India-Pakistan relations improve, you think that the decision to call off Foreign Secretary level talks, which was taken last August, was something that weakened your own position within Pakistan?
It really did, Siddharth, because the thing is that people like us, they take this stand that, we should have normal relations with India. We should normalize our relations with India. We should have a peaceful, we should have trade ties with India. And, we should not talk about war anymore. And there should be no jingoism and stuff like that. But the problem is that when the Indian government, the state, I'm talking about the state and the media. Even when I appear on television shows, and if I see a lot of Pakistanis on Indian television shows, what they get in return is a lot of hawkish response and a lot of jingoism. What they get is a beating out out of the Indian media. And we don't do that in Pakistan. I mean,
yes, I've appeared often on Pakistani TV
Yeah.
channels and I've never been subjected to the same kind of treatment.
Yeah, the treatment that they give us, I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Right.
And that's why a lot of us have stopped coming on Indian media.
Right.
I mean, we don't come on all shows until we know, unless and until we know the anchor and we know that, okay, fine, that person will be valuable. But even then, sometimes we are disappointed with the kind of response that we get from the guests and others. So that's something that also hurts our cause, because already we are over there, we are called raw agents. We are called Indian agents. We are told to go to India. We are called liberal fascists. And then people like Nawaz Sharif. I mean, Nawaz Sharif is not a liberal guy, but he is genuinely, he has invested himself in peace with India. He wants peace with India. But when he doesn't get a response from the Indian government, what he gets in return is more pressure from the from the Pakistani military.
Right.
That no way, no, we are not going to normalize our relations with India. And they're not giving you any ghas. I mean, wo ghas nahi dal hai tumhe kuch. So why should you do something good for them?
Well, I suppose the good news, Mehmal, is that the ice which had frozen over has gotten broken somewhat with the visit to Islamabad recently of Mr. Jaishankar, the Foreign Secretary. I think that Prime Minister Modi appears to be willing to give a further push or a second push for this dialogue process. I hope for the cause of India-Pakistan relations and for the very courageous fight that people like you and people in the Pakistani media and civil society are waging against extremism and intolerance, that this process succeeds.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the show. Do keep watching Rajya Sabha TV. We'll be back next week with another guest, another episode of Indian Standard Time. Thank you.